Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful. Roll top wire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you get it time. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Man, okay, my headphones do not sound right this morning. I don't know what I did, but we'll look into that a little bit. Hey, we've got, man, I'm a little bit late, but it should be an interesting week here. Now, we've got some of the bigger data points behind us with the CPI and everything, but we do have retail sales tomorrow. So, I had my thing all set up. I don't know. I've screwed up my camera somehow. I don't know what I did. It needs to be a little bit more this way. I'll tell you that much. Okay. Well, guys, let's look at the charts. Not a whole lot of movement over the weekend from the Treasury. It does look like they're pushing a little bit more aggressive here this morning, but here's the S&P 500. There was a lot of people are thinking, hey, maybe Thursday was the bottom. I don't know. There are a lot of analysts. Wall Street seems to be all kind of converging on 3,400 below us. So that's what we got going on down there. Oil is doing well here, but excuse me, still within a range. Natural gas, gold, and silver still in doldrums. Copper may be coming out. And then Bitcoin also bouncing with everything else and just kind of chilling around 30,000. And then the dollar. You know what I think is funny about Bitcoin, by the way, is that like the Bitcoin market is like, oh, it's so terrible. Like everybody's acting like the Bitcoin market completely collapsed. It didn't. It's only down 40%. It's only down 50%. Maybe some coins are down more. Of course, there's lots of people that lost money in Terra, right? But it's not a complete collapse. It's not like an 80% decline like they usually get. So if the S&P 500 were to go lower and we saw Bitcoin go lower, it could be ugly. And I think that you're giving them time to kind of for people to build up positions and get stops down there and everything. People bottom fishing and stuff. Yeah. Okay, so the treasuries, they did have an initial down move, but they are bouncing higher here quite easily, I might add. The 6J is seeing some volume come into it. It's actually some significant volume coming into it. So I think that that's what our driver is there. Okay, should we fix this camera? I don't know what happened. That's a little bit better. You can see more of me there. Okay, now we got to figure out, why does my microphone sound different? It's plugged in correctly, right? I don't know. It just doesn't sound quite right to me. It's a little bit too hot, I guess you could say. Oh, maybe it's this. Oh, is it be this one? Yeah, maybe the microphone's just a little bit too hot there. How's that? Take the edge off of that just a little bit. Okay. Well, how much up you think the treasuries can go here? That flow is looking pretty aggressive. I don't know. After a 13 tick run here in the 10-year, I don't know if that's a very good place to try and get on board, and I don't know what is causing this flow to come in, but there does appear to be a pretty strong drive coming in from the 6J. The S&P 500 moving higher here. We did get some Canadian numbers here. Oh, we got the New York Fed manufacturing number. Okay, dude, I am so far behind here. What the what? Okay, New York Fed manufacturing was negative 11.6 versus an expected 15, and that is causing a risk off move, but the S&P 500 is moving up, probably because the rates are coming off. That is interesting. Okay, well, but if it's news and it's only been 5 minutes here, I'm thinking, so the mistake I made was I didn't turn on my news squawk here. Good morning, Keller. That could make it a little bit more difficult for us to take a trade here. We might want to wait for that to kind of come back in some of these moves to equalize. But that is a really interesting data point. Stefanik tweet on baby formula shortage irresponsible? What's that? Oh, because he blamed it on the Biden administration? I think there's some truth to that. I mean, it's not like well, they did kind of shutter the plant. I don't know if you can necessarily blame that on the Biden administration because the regulators and whatever were doing their job. But certainly now at this point that it's still closed and everything, like the Biden administration should have been out in front of this. And it's just, have you noticed how it's just every time on every issue, they're always playing catch up? Man. Okay, so 2.92 was the first kind of place where we identified okay. Anyways, already could have gotten 5 out of it. There's a little bit of light liquidity above us. Interesting. Very interesting. Gonna take a bite of my food here. Let's just kind of watch this play out for a little bit. Okay. So I noticed there at the top that the spread in the micros was widening, and then the 10-year saw some pushes come through, and they really pushed them at that point and reversed around. So the tick down at the bottom was really strong. Liquidity is getting a little bit more normalized up here above the high, but the 6J is on the move. Granted, they've got and the 6J is down quite a bit on the day, so they probably have enough room to run here. Wow, Joe Weisenthal tweets, incredible stat, not a single car was sold in Shanghai in April. That is quite amazing. Okay, backing off for now. This is kind of funny that this is causing a rally in the stocks, right? The Leb's already on something this morning about violent revolutions, I think. The messianic illusion is that a single person, or worse, will come to save the world, fix society, improve the economy, rescue the company, etc. But advance comes from distributed progressive movements via negativa, mostly thanks to funerals. Compare the French Revolution, which set back democracy more than 60 years, to the English progressive constitutional monarchy. What you see with the Lebanese election is largely the result that 170,000 voters have died since 2018. Curious. Curious take. Yeah, it still doesn't sound right to me. I don't know. I don't know how to put it. Maybe it's just I've been listening on different headphones or over the weekend and things, but the things don't sound quite right to me. Well, it seems like the 10-year can move across this range between 14 and 16 pretty easily, but they're not willing to hit up and at 16 yet. I'm going to turn the microphone down just a little bit more. There we go. Empire State Manufacturing Index tends to be a somewhat important number, but not this important. Okay, so they ate through the offers at 16. Not hitting 16.5 quite yet. Hmm. Hey, NASDAQ killer, you're up. You're here early. Or early for you, at least, but that's good because they're moving. At least the treasuries are moving. I suppose you could still get some trades in ES too, although it's not like going crazy in ES. It's been what, maybe 10 points up since that news? Man, so for breakfast this morning, I had an English muffin, and it's way more tough and it like gets stuck in your teeth and stuff. It's driving me crazy. Driving me crazy. Wow, breaking looks like almost all card payment terminals in Norway have stopped working, leaving massive queues at grocery stores and shops. What? Buy the good news, sell so buy the bad news and sell the good news. That is kind of what it's turning into, isn't it? Like I think I understand why the models and everything are maybe buying the S&P 500, but and in the short term that's probably the right trade, but in the long term that is not a good print, is it? Like they were okay. I mean, granted, it's just the New York Empire State Manufacturing Index, and it's just one reading, but a negative 11.6 in May, almost almost as negative as they were expecting it to be positive. They were expecting 617 or something like that, which was already a drop. So for it to be negative, that's like really bad, right? That's what you're seeing is you're starting to see a another disruption in supply and set of economic setbacks to producers that is going to carry through to consumers, right? Okay. Oh, I forgot we got Feds Williams talking today. You know what? I don't think I'm on top of what we've got going on today. Let's just double check here. Oh, okay, okay. So Williams is going to be speaking at the Mortgage Bankers Association Secondary and Capital Markets Conference in New York. Audience questions expected, so that could affect us. I don't really have anything after that. Later today, we've got TIC long-term purchases. I've never heard of that one before. Difference in value between foreign long-term securities purchased by U.S. citizens and U.S. long-term securities purchased by foreigners during the reported period. I've never noticed that economic release before. The treasuries are kind of chilling out and rotating around 14. Well, let's say 15. They've spent more time at the bottom of this, well, more volume, let's say, at the bottom of this range than at the top of this range. It's not by a ton, but yeah. So you know what? I was reading this on Zero Hedge yesterday, and just a very interesting thing to me, because I was used to work for Goldman, and their analysts. And by the way, Matt Hatzi, or sorry, not Matt. His name's not Matt. What is his name? Anyways, Hatzius, he's a smart guy. Jan Hatzius, he is so knowledgeable. Like when he says stuff, I would pay attention. But you just got to be careful about like the specific economic projections that they make, like because a lot of those are still 50-50. And Goldman hasn't been too good on that this year. They thought that the market was going to go up to like 5,100 or something, which is like, oh, we're so far away from that, right? Well, and then Lloyd Blankfein comes in and says, well, I think the chance of a recession is fairly high, because Goldman was saying, it's still only like 35% or something. But apparently Lloyd has become a day trader now. He's one of us. Are you out there, Lloyd? Is Lloyd in my room? I would be so honored. No, he's probably too busy with bigger things to come in and listen to me. Well, it looks to me like on this trade, I picked a good spot, but we're not getting the follow through further that we would like. Granted, it could come more at like 7:15, but it looks like they're going to push against us here. Bitcoin has no future as a payments network, says FTX chief. Wow. Okay, so there is a little pullback in the 6J coming through there. The S&P 500, by the way, has given up its gains and is pointed down at the moment, precariously close to. Well, my chart is going to be messed up. It's not loaded the overnight. The overnight lows are way down at 39.81. So all these investment banks, they have different models. For example, Morgan Stanley is always bearish, while GS is quite bullish. It's interesting because in the end they use the same kind of data. Yeah. Well, and can you tell that like everybody kind of has their bias based on which bank they came from? Like I'm pretty sure that that the guy at Zero Hedge came from Morgan Stanley. And he doesn't seem to like Goldman Sachs very much. But the Goldman Sachs, I'm telling you, as far as research outlets go, the Goldman Sachs analysts are the best. I'm not going to say that they're always right or that they always perform the best, but they really do have like the best put together research organization. It's just that like research is only gets you so far, right? The market is not very informationally efficient, right? Now on the other side, when you hear stuff from the desk, from the guys on the desk side, like the order flow analysts, and they talk about how much of money they're expecting to come into certain markets on a monthly basis, man, pay attention to those when those come from Goldman Sachs, because that's the good stuff. They have a pretty good idea of where the money is coming and going because they can see flows that we can't. Okay, well they're able to touch 15 again. I wouldn't count out the possibility of them spiking up back up to the high there, but I think that it seems that right now they're still largely following the 6J. And if we're getting some like meta order buying coming in through this, it might be a little bit choppy and wishy-washy until 45 minutes has passed since the news, so like 7:15. Unless your name is Marco Kolanovac, he didn't make any good calls lately. Dude, we really everybody loves to make fun of the analysts, right? But we really should cut them some slack. It's a tough job. I don't think people realize how much work goes into what these guys do. Like, I think that most people sit down and think, well, I go and I watch CNBC and then I make my own. I mean, that's kind of what I do, right? Kind of make my own economic projections and everything. No. These guys are over there working like 12-hour days working on their models and arguing with each other and stuff. Like, it's a really serious job. They don't let you do it for very long. You're only allowed to have that job for something like 2 years, and then they move you on to something else because it's so stressful. Unless you're one of the guys that becomes like the leadership there. So like Jan Hatzius. And then that's where it's like, dude, like that guy really knows his stuff. He really knows what's going on. If you spoke to him in person, it would just blow your mind, all of the facts and figures that he can just spit out at the drop of a hat. It's nuts. It's just that the market isn't very informationally efficient, and so the kind of predictions that they try and make aren't, always aren't really very reliable. Now there is another side to this though. And that is there are some calls that you're not allowed to get wrong, right? Like I think the Bitcoin call, I don't think that that's one that you're allowed to get wrong, right? That's one that's so big that right or wrong, it like so much hinges on it that you basically have to get that one right. On which time frame or degree you have to get it right, I'm unsure, but yeah, I'm a software engineer and data scientist. I know it's hard, and I think some analysts are really good, but maybe those ones are not publishing their results. Well, I mean, there's the guys at the hedge funds, right? But at the same time, I think that the hedge funds rely on the analysis that they get from banks like a Goldman a lot. Okay, so that's interesting. There was a big iceberg at 04 half, a lot of volume dumped into that. It looks like they might be able to make it go bid though. Let's see. But there's something going on there. Okay, it looks like he's still there. That's not necessarily a good sign for us, right? Doesn't look like they're done there yet though. In fact, you might see lots of volume on both sides of that. No? Hmm. Hmm. Spread is tightening a little bit. And they're gonna come back up to it another try, maybe. 30 not really cooperating. There you go. Hmm. Hmm. I think the robots are starting to see that something's going on there and they're getting a little skittish. Because I'm seeing some points where it ticks and like both sides pull. Okay, well, I'm gonna puke. So don't like what's going on there. Ben Bernanke talking on Bitcoin, huh? It's a speculative asset, but it's one that whose underlying use value, gold has underlying use value. You could use it to fill cavities. The underlying use of Bitcoin is to do ransomware or something like that. It's so weird to see all of the economic experts try and speculate on what is the value of Bitcoin. Man, it is hot in this room today. I left the door open, but it didn't help clear things out. Maybe the vent is messed up. Hold up. Yep, yep. My vent was open. Hmm. Maybe they get back up there. I don't know. It was more like 04 though, right? Let's see here. Would that have been scratch for me? 92. Yeah. Okay. Not a scratch, but better than the price I got. Is Politico trying to compete with the Babylon Bee? Good morning, G959. G59. Okay. It looks like they took that spot bid in the 5-year. Maybe we're going to go after all. Well, this might finally go for us, but the way that I got shaken out there, we can't allow that to happen because if I'm hidden in with market orders both ways, you're just always going to lose $5, right? If Feds Williams is speaking, Okay. Then 04 half in the 5-year? No, not yet, at least. They're kind of tempting it. Man, it is hot in here. Sucks. Nope. Yeah, man. All of the stuff that I'm seeing coming through on the political front is about immigration. You know, Juan Williams, the GOP's big concern on immigration. Okay. I don't think it's a fake concern. I think that GOP voters are very upset about the way that the border is going. Maybe the politicians don't care, but I think that the voters are very, very much unhappy with this current state of things. Hmm. Okay, there you go. I was about to say, like, the 10-year keeps getting that 12.5 bid, but the other two aren't going. But then the 30-year ticked up. So, yeah, now they're all up. Still kind of slow as she goes. S&P 500 pushing lower. They definitely don't care, or at least if they do, about something. Seemingly, it's really for their own interest. Institutions. I mean, well, yeah, you can't think of institutions as people, really, right? Because the institutions, it's very easy for them to do things that are completely contradictory to what they say and claim to believe in, because the incentives drive the people within the organization to do something else. I have to say, people in our modern world, I think, really underestimate the power of incentives, you know? And you see it there in politics, right? Like the Democrat Party used to be very anti-immigration because they said is bad for the workers, right? But their party definitely benefits from a more lax immigration policy, and that won out, right? So you can always see that, and it's going to do it in the finance community too. They're going to say one thing, but then you look at it and you say, okay, but what's the incentive for them? Of course, the trick is to get your incentives in line with what you really actually want to do. Well, that decline there was not very good looking. Right now, though, the treasuries seem to be fighting over ticks, right? And we still got only 9:10 Eastern time, so looks like gold is on the upswing here. The 6J actually pushed higher here. So that's a little curious that the treasuries came down. All of a sudden, they're disconnected. But maybe that's because they're following more what Feds Williams is saying right now. I don't know. That's a little curious, though. Here's the 10-year falling out of the bottom. 12 has kind of been support, you could say. What time do they open? They open at 8:20 Eastern time. Okay, there's an uptick. Hmm. No, I'm not gonna. I would say, um, you get the initial move off of the 8:30 news, right? Sometimes you start to see things start moving about 15 minutes before the NYSE opens. So like we may see a change here in the next 5 minutes. Although a thing that kind of puts a wrench in that whole game today is that Feds Williams is speaking right now, and we didn't get a print of his prepared remarks, so we're listening to it as he gives the talk. And hearing on the news squawk, I'm not hearing anything too significant, but I suspect that there maybe are some people coming in here making hawkish bets, because that's kind of been the way that Federal Reserve speeches have gone lately. So we'll see. It looks like they're going to come back across the range here. See if they make it all the way to the other side. It's interesting that 119.13 has become the VWAP and is kind of starting to act a little bit like resistance. Man, looks like they will not that time come all the way back across. New York Fed's Williams says, my expectation is inflation will be coming down quite a bit next year. 50 basis point rate hikes makes sense at upcoming meetings. Can still see some passive buying at 12 in the 10-year. Every time I call this the 10-year, I'm kind of like, but it's not really the 10-year. I don't know if I should call it that anymore. In the ZN. Okay. Do you think the Asian European sessions? I think that you could develop. Listen, just trading a specific time in and of itself isn't an edge, but can you develop an edge in those time periods? Sure. I think if you're going to trade the Asian sessions, you're going to have a really good handle on what's going on in Asia, right? That's really hard for somebody in the United States to do. ZN is 10. Yeah, well, technically no, right? So the ZN is called the 10-year Treasury futures, but when you look at the actual delivery dates of the futures that are cheapest to deliver, it's actually more like a 7-year. That's why there's the Ultra 10-year now, TN, and that is more of a true 10-year. And that's also why you might see the ZN move and 10YR over here not move as much because of the spread. Like the 10YR actually kind of follows the 30-year a little bit more in some cases. Yeah, just like UB, exactly. Because the 30-year is really more like a 25-year or something like that, right? It's kind of interesting. I wonder how that kind of all came out to be like that in the end, but whatever. It's just kind of an interesting little quirk, but you got to know all of those things. Now, that didn't look very good at all, and the 30-year get dragged down there to a new low. Feds Williams talking about inflation. What's going on here? After the Terra stablecoin had breached its peg to 60 cents, the Market Stabilization Fund let insiders cash out 2 Bitcoin near par. I'm shocked. A great illustration of common theme with backed stablecoins, which Terra was not until it was. If you are 5 or 30 or 60% backed, that does not mean you will receive 5 or 30 or 60 cents on the dollar. It means 5 or 30 or 60% of claims will receive $1. Terra was a senior edge to design, which was not backed by underlying assets until the people behind it, sensing that the peg was weakening, raised a few $1 billion of funding to provide exit liquidity and defend the peg if it came under pressure. The relevance of Tether to this conversation and of the underlying faith of crypto insiders that a Tether in their hands is worth $1 to them is left as an exercise to the reader. Yes. You sound like you're insinuating that when under liquidity stress, Tether would distribute what assets it did have preferentially to co-conspirators rather than haircut non-connected depositors. Not an insinuation if I just say it out loud. Second thoughts. I think that's very interesting. It should be noticed that they have done this once in the wake of the Bitfinex hat where everyone got a 30% haircut. Coinbase said, actually, no, we think you're giving us every dollar in our accounts, and Bitfinex did exactly that. This, of course, means that the small account holders saw a wealth transfer to Coinbase. Wow. That's not something I had ever considered. Okay, well, there is some pushback to these, but at the moment the treasuries are looking awfully heavy to me. What are your thoughts on inflation in general? Isn't it bad? Why do they keep printing more? Wouldn't USD suffer the same state as Redbank? Well, so you got to remember that inflation is a very complicated dynamic that is affected by a large swath of things, right? So on one hand, we had supply disruptions. So a lot of goods are costing more just because they cost more to ship, or because they're so difficult to even get them over here. There's less of them, and so people are paying up for them, right? And then on top of all of that, you gave people a lot of stimulus, right? Like the demand after the pandemic was 20% higher than it usually is. So that to me would be, okay, number one, they were giving people money and they were buying stuff with it. And number two, there was probably a lot of pent up demand, like people saved up during the pandemic and didn't go out and buy things, and then they did go out and buy things. So now you've got inflation, okay, because of supply disruptions. So what happens? The year end comes, and it comes time for, like, year end bonuses and yearly wage increases and everything. And you say, well, I'm making 10% less now. So everybody starts demanding that their employer pays them more, right? And then because everybody is making more, all of the companies look at that and say, oh, the market can handle higher prices, so we're going to raise our prices. And then you get the price wage spiral. So that's what the Federal Reserve is trying to avoid right now, is they're saying, oh, if we don't put the brakes on it hard right now, and that, yes, that could mean, well, I mean, it did mean reining in the economy a little bit, then you're going to get a wage price spiral, right? Now, there's this conspiracy theory out there on the Democrat side, and I really do call it a conspiracy theory. In fact, that's what the Washington Post calls it. Like the most lefty, one of the top 3 most lefty publications in the nation, and they called it a conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory being that the only reason prices are going up is because companies are increasing prices unjustifiably, and they're doing that because people weren't working or something like that. We needed to increase inflation so that people would be forced to go back and get jobs. But again, the price that a company charges for a good is based more on the market than it is like how much it costs them to produce it. I mean, if they can't ship things over here, then that's a problem, because they can't sell as many as they want, right? Once you get through those supply disruptions, they look at their marketing research and they determine what price consumers can pay, and they do all of their equations to maximize their profit, right? So they do that every time. They haven't been sitting back and being like, well, we probably could increase prices, but we're not going to do it because we're nice. And then all of a sudden they switched around and decided to be greedy for some reason. It's kind of silly, right? Once you understand the economics behind it, it's kind of silly. But so you got these Democrats, they believe that. And since they think that, the inflation is all entirely caused by these companies, then of course the Federal Reserve stepping in and raising interest rates to fight inflation and prevent a wage price spiral is actually the Federal Reserve just working against the common man and trying to steal all our money, right? But that's not the case. The reality here is that the Fed's primary job is to prevent inflation from getting out of control. And over time, in the past history, is the history of the Federal Reserve has basically been the Federal Reserve screwing up and figuring out how they're actually supposed to do it, right? In the 70s, they were like, oh, there's this inflation that's coming, but we don't think that it's really because of our monetary policy, so we shouldn't do anything. And that ended up being the wrong call. And so eventually they said, screw it. We're going to raise interest rates. They did it very aggressively, and it fixed the problem, right? So now that they've gone through that experience and they know better, they're not going to let it happen again. They are going to stop a wage price spiral from happening. Now, the unfortunate thing about that is that in this environment, it means that basically everything gets a haircut. You can't, Bitcoin is a risk asset. All risk assets have been hammered here, many as much as 40 to 80%. But then even all of these flight to safety things like gold's not doing very well. The only thing that's really done very well has been the commodities. Copper, no, but like oil and wheat, food stuff, right? But I don't know if you can say that the rise in those assets was necessarily because of the inflation as much as it was just disruptions within those specific markets. So there's like nowhere to hide. It really sucks, right? So So, and here's the takeaway from this. Everything's down, right? You know how they say, like, during recessions and downturns, that's when the real money is made? Well, it's true. You can buy things up cheap. You have to be in the position to take a really big hit and still put money in. That's how you make the big bucks, right? You have to outlast everybody else, right? Now think about the way that most day traders trade, right? Most of these guys, they leveraged up as hard as they could, um, during the good times, and then they just held it all the way back down, and they give up everything that they made. So many day traders out there. Have you noticed there was a time when day trading was just the buzz and it was just so popular, and now all of a sudden it's not very popular. Like, most of these people that were trying to do that gave up on it, right? Because they could not handle the downturn. They blew their accounts, right? So right now our primary concern should be preserving our capital, right? Reserve our capital so that when this is all over with, we've still been putting money into our retirement accounts and everything, and you can come roaring back and fully take advantage of the next bull run, right? Tesla down 0.5% delays plans to restore Shanghai output to pre-lockdown levels. I'm just reading a couple of Twitter down 3.5% as Musk wants to see evidence about bots and DAUs. Okay, so by the way, the 10-year did push a new high, but it was only by a teensy bit. Well, remember when I said 715? Look at this chart, man. So there's 715. Yeah, you kind of got to give or take a few minutes, but yeah, it did it. It did it. It was a shame that I had let myself get shaken out, but I think, I think that I should have been putting a wider stop on myself there. In that case, I could have saved myself $9, but in the end, I still kept trading it. So. Say rather meowing. What? I don't know. I feel like we need to just find a different way, or maybe go back to gold. So many currencies blow up by overprinting. Well, but not really. Like, here's the thing: is that you're comparing, like, things that happened in third world countries, right? It's really, really different when you have a developed economy, like a fully, information age economy, for starters. And then it's really, really different when you're the world reserve currency. That doesn't mean that the modern monetary theory people are right, okay? The problem with the modern monetary theory people is that they think that they can just do all of this stuff and that the market won't respond to it. But you start doing the MMT stuff and the bonds react, and not in the way that they want. And it's very negative, okay? But you can just see what the dollar has done during this crisis. Has the dollar responded to the inflationary pressures and become weaker? No, it has not. The dollar is at, like, as highest that it's ever been. Why? Because the flight to capital is a much stronger force in this market. The flight to safety and cash ends up still being a better place to be. If you were in cash, like, yeah, you lost some money to inflation, but you saved money from the markets going down. It was like, is it really worth it to be in the stocks and everything and lose 40% instead of 10%? Like, think about it. That's like your only choice. Oh, you're saying that, well, by the end of the recession, it'll come back meowing. Well, you might be right that I think that you want to be. How do I say this? I don't think that easy money is going away. I don't think that we're going into a regime where interest rates are just going to keep rising, and 5 years from now we'll be at like 15% interest rates, and like it was in the 80s. I don't think that that's going to happen. The long run inflation pressures are still very deflationary, and what we're looking at right now, it looks like the possibility of a recession is real, and it could be very ugly for people. But in the larger scheme of things, it's if we do get a recession out of it, it's likely to be a milder one. So I think that you're going to come back into this world where monetary, interest rates continue to be somewhat low, and you just want to be long equities. Is the long and short of it. So here we got the S&P 500 opening with the Treasuries now touching their highs again. And the Treasuries did get a higher high, but then since then they kind of been just chilling. But MMT just feels like the new normal, right? For sure, they can let interest rates rise above the inflation rate over the long run. This will crush the entire economy. Yeah. Well, so the thing is what I see in modern monetary theory was you had these guys that they understood some of what was going on during the whole last bull run in terms of economic policy. And they just interpreted it in the way that was most convenient for their leftist politics, right? Because can you see how just with the inflation thing, like remember again, like one of the big stories in the Washington Post was them calling the left's what is the word? The left's narrative on inflation is a conspiracy theory, is what they called it, right? You can kind of see how when you live in that bubble, how that misinformation upon misinformation kind of stacks up. And something that's even worse is you get people that are actually somewhat knowledgeable, right? Like maybe they took an economics degree, right? But they're not a bond trader. I really have a hard time seeing how you would come in and like day trade bonds every day and believe in modern monetary theory, right? Because all of the things that they say they want to do, it's like, no, the market would punish you hardcore for that, right? But the other side of it is that some people seem to interpret easy monetary policy as modern monetary theory, which is not accurate either. Right. Sign analysts say he never saw inflation drop 2% without a recession. I don't know if we've ever really seen a comparable. Like the whole thing is that everything that we're seeing in this economy right now is really quite unprecedented, and we really don't have anything comparable to it. I mean, yeah, we've seen inflation before, but the inflation that we saw in the 70s was in some respects very similar, but in some respects very different, right? And we've never seen this situation where, because again, what was the difference between now and the 70s? Well, the 70s globalization was like when the path towards globalization like first started. Now we have like fully globalized economies with fully optimized and fragile supply chains, and this is the first time that we've ever seen them disrupted in this degree, and the inflation that kind of got triggered by all of that, right? So what do we have to compare it to? We don't have anything. I think that now, if this happens again, like let's say that 30 years from now we get a comparable situation, I think that the next time around the Federal Reserve is more anxious to raise interest rates back up, because they know that when we start coming out of the recovery, that there's there's a high chance of inflation as we try and equalize, and that inflation can kind of harm you, you know? So to say, but then on the split side, does this kind of equilibrium period end up, going down into a recession? Well, there remains to be seen. It's really is starting to seem that the probability of a recession is a lot higher than the analysts have been saying. I'll give you that much. It's another analyst saying they're copying Volcker. No, they're not. They're not copying Volcker. You gotta remember that Volcker raised interest rates a whole percentage point, right? Like you have literally the most easy monetary policy that you can possibly do, and then you come in and you try to get back to that equilibrium area where interest rates are neither hurting or helping the economy, and all of a sudden that's like the end of the world. I just think is the most hilarious thing. It's just the perfect example of how markets overreact to everything. Well, the action since we had that push to higher highs has felt a little messy to me. We Tether tried to talk to every reputable firm that we could get that would talk to us, and no one would audit us, not even an attestation. Oh man, that's not very confidence inspiring. Something that really bothers me about modern monetary theory, just if this is kind of more personal, like this is just what I see, and it grates on my gears, is the people that I see on social media pushing these ideas aren't very serious. It's like, oh, I'm an economics student that just graduated with my bachelor's degree, and I think that modern monetary theory sounds like that is absolutely right, and all in on that. And it's like, nothing. You've never even been in the industry. You have no effing clue what you're talking about, and you getting on social media and mostly just acting like a regular teenager on there for the most part, and then maybe half the time talking about modern monetary theory. That just that really bothers me. So you got some people that are pushing ideas. I mean, it's one thing to have an opinion on an issue, right? It's another thing entirely to be pushing for an ideological restructuring of the entire financial system, and you're like a basically a student still. Like, come on. This is a little scary to me. Like, systems, our modern civilization is really complicated, guys. Like anybody that's coming in here and telling you that they've got it all figured out and all we got to do is follow their ideology and we'll fix all of science. You just ignore those people, man. Those are dangerous people, because that's a person that they're either it's just the same thing that I always say with like scammers, right? It's either they're dangerously naive or they're outright scamming you. Like they're telling you that because they know that that's what tends to be popular and what will get them the attention. They're either doing it for that or they really believe it, which is dangerously naive. These systems are really complicated. Just look at what's going on here with the interest rates, right? We have this group of people. It's like the Federal Reserve Board. They literally spend their whole life and literally do nothing but think about monetary policy. That's all they do. And then you've got some kid out of school says, "Oh yeah, I know better than them." Come on. Come on. The reality is that even when you dedicate your whole life to it, it's a complicated issue and you're going to get it wrong sometimes. MMT is just a new name or narrative to keep the system alive. I mean, overprinting money existed before in the 30s, 70s, and 90s and has led to inflation and recessions. Well, I think that really what you're seeing is you're seeing some really strong cognitive dissonance on the left, right? Because the left's belief was, well, okay, so going into the pandemic, let me see if I can set up the kind of like the political landscape, if you will, that has kind of led us to the current state that we are in terms of economic politics. In the 2020 election, one of the more interesting or let's say different storylines that we saw in there was Andrew Yang's candidacy. And Andrew Yang's candidacy was premised completely on his advocacy for a basic universal income. So the idea on the left has been that the richest people among us can create all of the productivity for everybody, and the rest of us can just live off of that. That's kind of the fever dream. And the idea that because of automation that we will eventually have to go over to a system like that, which is just silly, but I digress. So when the pandemic came along and you saw like on Reddit, man, they were all saying it, is they were saying, look, this is the perfect test case for basic universal income. Is we're going to come in and we're going to give everybody some money to help them make it through the pandemic. And the left thought that, yeah, you could just come in and you could shut down the whole economy and pay everybody and everything would be fine because it's all fake. It's not all fake, guys. There's real value attached to these things. If you buy a bond, there's money that is by law guaranteed to you that you will get unless like society is collapsing. In the society in the world that's the least likely to collapse, supposedly. Okay. So when that happened, we got all of these knockoff effects, right? And the economy is struggling. So most people, the majority of Americans have kind of came in and said, okay, yeah, somewhere along the line we made some mistakes. Maybe printing all that money wasn't the best thing. Maybe completely shutting down the economy is not the best thing. Here you got China, they're doing it again. I think that there's going to be some long-term repercussions for the CCP that they maybe won't like, but we'll see. By the way, it's still pretty random between 15 and 14, let's say. Right? So how do you like reconcile all of that, right? And basically what the Democrat Party has been doing is the same thing that they've been doing for the last 6 years or so now is they just run from one mass hysteria to the next with a short attention span so that they never have to deal with the contradictions, right? I know that that's like super political, but that's just, I think, the reality to some extent when it comes to political issues is that the Democrat Party is just like in outright denial. No, surely the inflation can't be due to our policies and just the nature of what happens in markets after a huge supply disruption like that. No, it's the greed of the corporations, right? So, but the split side of that is that I think the majority of Americans kind of know what's going on here. And they also realize that Joe Biden has not been a very effective president, and the support among the Democrat Party is very, very low right now because of all that. Do you know about 10 Cent? Sure, I know about 10 Cent. What about him? Are they going to own the world at some point? It sure seems like they're getting big, aren't they? I remember I've known about 10 Cent more than most because I was my big thing before trading was Unreal Tournament. I had a YouTube channel about Unreal Tournament, and I remember when Tencent invested in Epic Games, and there was a little bit of drama around that about a Chinese company getting involved. Now, if that were to happen now, like, can you imagine how much complaining there would be about that now? Jeez. Oh, do they own Discord? I don't know. So let me tell you something. Discord. Can I just vent about Discord for a second? Like, I don't want to talk about that shooting because I really anytime there's a shooting, I think that when we give it so much press, it's just not a negative thing. I've been seeing something completely unrelated to the shooting, but I've just kind of been seeing where, like, when you start to talk about certain negative things, it can have effects on certain other people that you really don't want. Okay. Um, like if one kid commits self-harm at school, then like other kids start doing it. That sort of a thing, right? So we don't want to talk about it. But one of the big things coming out of this that I think at least should be a topic of discussion is that this whole thing was like planned on Discord. Like, they were talking about it and everything. Discord trust and safety is the most worthless piece of shit. I cannot tell you how many things where I've reported stuff to trust and safety, like complete blatant scams, doxing, all sorts of other awful behavior, and they don't do jack squat. They don't do a single thing about it. Their trust and safety is so useless. It's like they literally tell them to be completely useless. And now that something has happened, I really think that all eyes should be turning to Discord and saying, you've got to change something. You've got to take this trust and safety more seriously. And it's going to be a problem for all social media. It seems to me that the resources required to really properly moderate a public system like that is a lot, and that these social media companies in the long run aren't actually as high of a margin of a business as people think that they are. What a sudden spike in the dollar. Yeah, it was. The dollar's come. Well, can you see though? It's interesting that the dollar's coming up. The S&P 500 has fallen apart here. I'm not hearing anything on the news squawk. I'm not seeing anything on Twitter. I'm just seeing the S&P 500 making its head for the downside again, and the world seemingly freaking out again. The treasuries, they went higher there by quite a bit. There's a big old order up above our heads in the 5 year. For a bit, the 5 year kind of felt like it was lagging, but they really caught up there when they broke highs. Oh man, when you look at it in the 30 year, that was like a really aggressive move. Well, so I think that also part of what you're seeing here is that, again, like 4,000 is like this really big line in the sand. And so it seems like a lot of traders have this idea that, like, if it goes above 4,000, I'm going to buy, and if it goes below 4,000, I'm going to sell into it. And maybe that's what's going on right now. But I don't think that the economy is going to go into a recession or anything. But almost all of the analyst estimates that I've seen all have them going down to 3,400, and we're still at 4,000, right? So that means that there probably is some more room for selling at the very least. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but are there people that are going to sell it at the very least? Sure, yeah, yeah. Man, so almost this whole move down. Okay, there we go. I got filled. I'm taking that. I think that maybe there could be some further move, but what I've been seeing on these moves lately is that there are kind of some deep pullbacks, and I've often not regretted putting that take profit out. So I'm going to take profit and just be content with the $20 today, right? That's good enough for now. Yeah, well, they want to get that 20% decline in the S&P. You're totally right. It's totally it, dude. Like, I'm really surprised that they didn't get to it. Well, should I say surprised? Like, it was just like 38.50. They magically bounced right off of it. Oh, did we had you say we had the same trade going? Well, good. I would hope. I wouldn't want to be the one short treasuries on this move, right? I wouldn't want to be the one short this. That was some like really aggressive push further. That 5-year, that might have been enough. Like, if I hadn't have gotten out on that, I think I'd definitely be thinking about getting out now. Where did I get out at? 9.4. Oh wow. Okay, so there was almost $10 more in it. But I think that's enough. That there's at least a short-term disruption right there. But now I know I'm going to regret that take profit. Oh, you took 07 to 21. Oh, you've been holding it for a long time then. No, you didn't get 07. You're lying. Yep, you're lying. Oh, wait. Maybe if you had held it earlier than that, you could have gotten it. Okay. You were holding it for a really, really long time if you had it. You got it at or are you talking about the 30? Maybe you're talking about the 30. Yeah, you must be talking 30. That's a little bit different. If you were doing 07, then you probably got in when I got in the first time, and then that trade really should have been a $30 to $40 move for me, but I screwed up, right? I'm still a little battered up from the last few weeks, and when it was going 10 ticks against me, I freaked out and bailed, thinking, no, it could totally turn back down. And then almost immediately is when it turned up, and I got back in. Luckily enough, I still had enough left in me to try and take it again. But look at that, I could have gotten 10 more though on it. See, the thing, maybe my concerns were not really warranted, because I could be taking 884 like right there. That would have been easy. So, because what I've been worried about is I've seen so many of these that they'll come right back to 17 almost immediately. What? The Financial Times says voters are getting better educated. This isn't good news for democracy. What the heck? I just these some of these headlines. Okay, they just keep getting worse and worse. The use case for liberal democracy isn't that it is better at avoiding mistakes. Democracies are no better of steering clear of high-risk financial products, disastrous wars, or political extremists than illiberal democracies or full-fat autocracies. Where democracies do better is error correction. They retreat from wars of choice, sharply regulate industries, and provided they get the chance to vote extremists out of the powers. I don't think that's at all, but okay. But democracy's capacity to overcorrect now faces an unlikely threat. Unelected politicians are, whether they like it or not, in the business of providing votes with what they want and what electorates want for their kids to get educated. As a result, across the democratic world, the number of people attending university continues to rise, while literacy and numeracy, too, are on the up. Yeah? I see. So what they're saying is that people in Congress can't make good decisions anymore because they are too beholden to the public what do we call it, the public mob or whatever, and so sometimes they end up making poor decisions because of that. Bad news is that while you can take a graduate to the ballot box, you can't make them think. All of us, regardless of how many degrees we have, like to seek out information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs. And as a new paper by Michael Hannon at the University of Nottingham finds, one unhappy consequence of university education is that voters get better at doing this and worse at changing their minds. I don't think that it's that. No, I actually I think that that's wrong. I like they're kind of on the right track, but I would argue that, again, incentives have a really hard impact on things, right? Politicians don't necessarily do what they want to do. They do what they have to do because of their voters, right? And what their voters want is more often than not in line with just the economic incentives that you get. One of the problems that I see in democracy right now is that more and more people are starting to become aware to this fact and are almost starting to use it cynically. Like, I know a lot of kids, like in their early 20s that voted for Joe Biden simply because of the college debt forgiveness, even though they're like, I don't like Joe Biden and I think it's very unlikely that he's going to do it. But, on the off chance that it happens, that would be really beneficial to me. And so I'm going to do it. Right. The almost cynical approach to things. That's not good. Right. But so one of the problems that you have in Congress right now is that when you have different groups that have vastly different incentives and that conflict with each other, quite frankly, how do you resolve that? And what do you do? Do you just one side plows over the other side? Well, that's not the way that we've done it in America. In America, you can't really, it's hard to get, push something extreme through. And so what do? You compromise. And there's been many, many eras in U.S. history where compromise has been a big part of it. There was a lot of compromise back in the 90s. But now that everybody is reading the internet and following what's going in at Congress on a day-to-day basis and holding their politicians' feet to the fire, now politicians can't compromise. Now they can't compromise, and that's a problem because now we can't get anything done. Yeah. Something that bothers me in modern society is that it seems like there's this push. Let's see here. Compromise, Democrats gets everything that they want and Republicans capitulate. But Democrats say the other thing, the opposite way around, about how inept Democrats are and they don't get anything. I think it's different problems. I think that Democrats, when they get in office, they don't do anything, and they would prefer to have Republicans undermine them because Democrats don't actually want to do the things that they said they would when they get put in office. Or once you get into the position of power, you realize that the promises you made were actually not very good, were dumb policies, essentially. But you can't turn around and say that. I really think that happens a lot on the left. I to be honest. You need more choices? No. See, having two, so it's complicated. So this is the same kind of problem, is that most voters would like to have a party that more accurately reflects their values, right? So you could go and you could get a party that matches what you think almost exactly, and then we'd have like 12 different parties. But unfortunately, as we see from what happens in Europe, that doesn't mean that you get the policies that you want. It just means that these parties have to play even more political games in order to form coalitions and get anything done. The two-party system in the United States has been one of its greatest strengths. I don't know where you go from here, but then what happens is a lot of people say, "Well, I don't like the two parties that are there, so I'm going to go and start my own party." And kind of what you end up with is people that never really get to see the more serious power side of politics, and they quickly become disillusioned and wash out of political advocacy, right? And what I see a lot, so like for instance, there's a guy I know that the kind of not the person that I would have ever expected to run for office for something. And he ran for a few things, but then he ran for I think it was like the PTA board or whatever they call it. And he was like, "Nah, you have to spend too much money to do it," which is a real problem in the way that our politics are going, because the caucus systems are getting thrown out. But you don't go in and start running for office like right away, guys. If you want to get into that sort of thing, this is not how it works. What you do is you start volunteering for the top campaigns in your area, right? Like if you're a Republican, okay, and there's a Democrat incumbent in the area, and you've got a Republican that stands a good chance at dislodging the incumbent, then you get involved in that campaign and you do as much as you can. That's how you get in, guys. And once you start volunteering for campaigns and you do it regularly and you become known as one of those people that gets involved in campaigns, that's when they start to say, "Oh, hey, you're actually really smart, and you actually know a lot about public policy, and you would be a good politician. Why don't you run?" And then it's kind of like you get roped into doing it, right? And now you have this whole support network and people to help you fundraise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how you become a successful politician, right? But what does that mean? That means that's a lot of time. That's like spending every weekend going to events to push your candidate, and spending your nights, and entangling your whole family in that sort of stuff. So that's something that I haven't been able to do since since I got remarried, because we've been too busy with other stuff. But at some point, I think once the youngest is 5, that we could maybe start doing again. Right? You got to do it slow. And kind of the point they were getting to was that there seems to be this overarching idea pushed in society that we need to make the world better, and everybody needs to be involved in making the world better. And that means that everybody needs to be involved in advocacy to some extent. I think that the people on the Hollywood side do that the most, because people tell them, "Oh, you're rich and famous now, so you're kind of obligated to do these sorts of things." And so they're trying to encourage everybody else to do it. But the reality is that most people shouldn't be involved in advocacy. The reality is that there are severe downsides to advocacy, and it's not a good world, I think, where everybody is involved in advocacy. You've kind of got to pick and choose what you think is going to be, guys, right? I could have gone a bunch of different ways, and when you're younger and you're in your 20s, you should have like 2 or 3 things that you're doing, right? But for me, what won out, it was the finance, and eventually we found that was the thing that I was the most interested in. And so, am I an advocate so much as I am? I feel that I'm more an expert, and I try and present to you information to know what are the major kinds of lines of thinking, as well as my own line of thinking as to what's going on in the market right now. Right? That's what I chose, and I will dive into politics in as much as it's relevant to the trading, right? But you're not going to hear me, um, you know, I don't dive into these issues that I don't know anything about, right? I try and stick to the thing that I decided to become an expert in, right? Because so that you can do it well. And also because I don't want to get myself in that bubble headspace where uh, the politics is so strong that it affects my trading. Because that happens. There's so many people. I tell you what, after the 2008 crisis, man, well, how much time do we have left? We have a whole hour. Okay, cool. After the 2008 crisis, you know who missed out? Like, seriously, you know who missed out? It was Republicans. Hold on. They're Republicans because Obama was in charge and because they tend to prefer higher interest rates. Um, Republicans did not participate in the bull market, especially not at the beginning, nearly as much as they should have. And it was because of politics. And that's why you get these websites like Zero Hedge that just continue to be like perma bear. And it's like, well, if you did what they said, you would have missed this whole rally, right? Because you can definitely kind of get caught up in this space where you know so much about what's going on in public policy that it's kind of hard to make, to want to invest. But then you kind of, if you really know what you're doing and you're really focused on the investing side of it, then you can go in and say, well, yeah, but when everybody's getting scared, those are the best places to get involved. And you have to continue to be consistent, right? Put money. I make a challenge to you guys. So two things really. First thing is that if you do not have a rainy day fund, you really should get a rainy day fund. Okay, so I recommend you use Yada for that. I have an affiliate link for that in the profile. The reason you do that is just because that's the highest interest rate that you're going to get with a savings account. Okay, but you should have like 1 or 2 months worth set aside, because here again, the whole thing is you've got to be able to take the hit and keep going, right? And I don't know how bad this is going to get, but it could get bad. It could get bad, and the last thing that you want is to be blowing out, have your stop hit in the best time to buy, right? And then miss the whole thing up because you can't afford it, right? So have that rainy day fund set aside so that if something happens, you can keep going. And then number 2 thing is that if you're still going, you're still doing well, is put some money away in a Roth IRA every month. And now, and if you're already doing that, put in more during this downturn, because if the S&P 500 were to go down to 3,400, that would just be great buying. That would just be great buying. The Republican Party serves who? It's not any constituency in the U.S. besides make it. Oh, that couldn't be the more opposite of what it actually is right now, though. Well, Roland. So that was the kind of, okay, so the Republican Party traditionally was the party of the rich. And before the Great Depression, they were kind of the party of the corporate interests and so forth. And the Democrats were kind of more of the workers' party, right? But that all kind of flipped around during the Obama years. During the Obama years, the left became made money from the tech industry, right? California and New York made a ton of money during the Obama years because of the expansion of tech and finance. And so when you go and you look at most corporations today and like how are they advocating, they are much, much more leaning on the Democrat side and helping the Democrats out more than they are helping out the Republicans. 100%. Which I guess is why a lot of the time it seems like the Democrats act like the Republicans. But the reality is that the whole kind of like schema has flipped. It is on one side, you have the coastal areas and the large corporate interests. And on the other side, you have the periphery rural areas interests. And the Republican Party has very, very much become the rural party. And right now, the rural, they're not really in with the mega caps. I mean, there's a lot of incumbent Republicans out there, right? But all of these new guys, they're not pro corporation guys, not at all. And they've been kind of holding. I mean, the policies that they ask for are a little bit different, right? I mean, they still want low taxes. For instance, Republicans still want low taxes, but they hold in. They're not being friendly to corporations. I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind because otherwise you're gonna make complete misreads about what the politicians will actually do when they get in office. Because again, one of the reasons I was thinking so much about the inflation thing was I saw a TikTok where this guy, he was pretending to be, he was kind of trying to explain what they thought is happening with inflation. And it was the corporations were saying, well, now we need to, raise the price on everything so that they'll get back to work. And the Republican was just like, yes, daddy. And I'm like, it's not how it went down, dude. The real thing that's been going on here in politics in the pandemic is that rural areas are not as vulnerable to a large pandemic outbreak, and so therefore politically they don't care because to them it's only harmful. Seriously. Okay, if the Republican Party's constituencies were the people that lived in the cities, it would be exactly the opposite. Right? Like that's I thought that it was going to be like a personality thing. I thought, well, Republicans are more likely to be concerned about disease transmission because they have less openness. And so Republicans will maybe be more concerned about the spread of the pandemic. But that turned out to not be the case. What really ended up being the case was that Republicans tended to be more owning small businesses or living in rural areas that are just unquestionably harmed by pandemic era policies. And so they oppose them for those reasons. And the Democrats tend to live in the cities. And so the people in the cities tended to support them because for those reasons. Otherwise, their hospitals, they knew like their hospitals be overrun, like it'd be a big problem. If it just happened to be the case for whatever reason that Republicans tended to be the people in the city centers, but like all of their beliefs were the same, but it's just they happened to live in the city centers, then Republicans would have been the one pushing the pandemic policies. It's that simple. Because of what? Incentives. Liberals are the real Karens. I mean, is it just me? I always thought that Karen was a liberal. I've always thought of Karen as that liberal, but also a NIMBY. So they're liberal, but they don't ever want anything in their community to change, which is kind of a conservative thing. But so it's kind of contradictory. But in my area, that's probably it more. In my area, I see that like the people that are like mad about something changing and stuff, they tend to be liberal, which is kind of funny, but. Well, the S&P 500 is recovering pretty well here. I'm kind of checking to see if there are any other correlations. I can see that the treasuries definitely had a really good stop out and move up here, but I don't see much of a reason for me to be in a trade anymore. So even though I could have made 40 off of that, could have made $10 more Heck, if I wanted the other $10, I could try going short right now in the hopes that it comes back. But I think that it is better for me to just kind of chill and be happy with what I got. Karen was an uptight white woman. Yeah. You know what? I'm impressed with my ability to get super political today and not dive into the politics behind that shooting. 'Cause I don't know. I see a lot of stuff going on in the online discussions about that are really scary to me. Trying to blame entire groups of people for that. It's just like they're trying to further inflame things. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. But I don't know. I guess this isn't necessarily a very effective persuasion technique, but I think it's the real truth is that systems are really complex. A whole society is a really complicated thing. And yeah, problems will become embedded in the society as it develops and things that need to be changed. But you just can't come in and burn and slash because it's a very complicated system and it's really hard to predict what will happen. That's why it's kind of better to do things a little bit by little bit as we understand what's going on. Yeah. Well, but that's not true though, Roland. There was actually I can think of at least 5 shootings that happened. But the media couldn't turn it into that it was a white Republican, so they got ignored. But I can think of at least ones that I at least okay, like to me, a guy going into a subway station and shooting up a bunch of people is like, probably going to generate more media attention because it happened like literally in New York where everybody goes. But he didn't kill anybody for starters. He was inept. And he wasn't a white guy, so they just kind of ignored it, right? Or that guy that ran over 50 people at a parade in his car. Like, come on. They ignored them all. I guess it's good. I mean, we do want to ignore them, but we should ignore this one too. At least we shouldn't be getting the guy's name out there. Well, but we're talking about mass shootings. Mass shootings don't happen every day, but they do happen frequently. It's not even that. It's an ideologically driven mass shooting, right? There were what appears to be ideologically driven mass shootings recently that got ignored. They're boring AF. Well, but they're not. I mean, they're scary, and that gets people's brains going. One of the problems that we have in our society, this is another thing. Listen, you get impacted by the media you consume. You really do. I consume a lot of media, but I pick up good ideas from people too. And one of the things that I was seeing was this guy was talking about how, your brain was evolved to keep you alive. So if you are safe and well provided for and you have everything, you have all of your needs taken care of, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Your brain doesn't just stop working and stop, trying to protect you. Like it needs to keep in practice. So it invents things. It invents imaginary scary things, or it causes you to watch the news and hyper-focus on a supposedly scary thing. And it builds it up in your mind as a more prevalent issue than it really is. Or it will replay things that happened in your past about, What should we have done differently in that situation? This is why there's a lot of anxiety in society today still. It's actually like you'd maybe have a little bit less anxiety if you had to, be scared for your life every once in a while. This is just the way that the brain is, right? And so, yeah, a mass shooting is kind of like the sweet spot of the sort of issue that really gets people's brains going. And the media totally takes advantage of it. Media totally takes advantage. It's really quite disgusting the way that the media behaves around these sorts of things. And then they start, pitting group against group. What the shooter did was a mainstreamer. That's just absolutely disgusting stuff. Absolutely disgusting stuff. Someone is deciding what gets attention and what doesn't in the media. It seems like it, but I don't know how that happens. Like the thing that weirds me out is that it seems like some events were ignored and not given media attention explicitly because they were afraid that it would encourage copycats. And yet then when they come on this issue, they they scream it from the rooftops. It's almost like they want more people to go and be copycats. I don't get it. We shouldn't be giving these people attention. Like, it's very, like, just when you look at the psychology of a mass shooter, right? The psychology of a mass shooter is these are usually men that are at the bottom rung of society. And so especially if they're ideologically driven, they think that the thing they could do most to contribute to society is to be a martyr because their life is not worth very much anyways. That's what drives these people. And the fame of, that comes from it afterwards, is kind of a motivating factor for them. So if you don't give them any fame and you don't talk about the shooter at all or why he did it, that would kill a lot of the incentive that drives them to do these things. Concur. I know you all agree. Like listen. I know I'm preaching to the choir because all Americans believe this. This is the only one that, in fact, even people in the media probably believe this, but they make money on it. So what you gonna do, right? They do the thing that makes them the money, right? We all know it's a problem. Everybody in America knows that there's problems with the media. We've known it for well over 100, 200 years. But what can you do about it? I don't know if there's anything you can do about it. If that's what makes them money, is that really what most people want? I think it is. I think that is the sort of issue that captures people's attention the most. Yeah. Like think about it for a second. On TikTok, okay? If you make a TikTok, the thing that plays to the TikTok algorithm the best is like a thirst trap. Okay? But listen, if you're, and you know that, if you're a guy on TikTok, chances are that you watch thirst traps, regularly. It's kind of hard to not watch it, and you might not go super deep into the rabbit hole, but it's going to show you one once a day, It's kind of a messed up thing about human psyche. It's like we can all see a problem and all understand a problem and still like be almost completely powerless to change it. Oh wow, Jeff Bezos is a Grateful Dead fan. Okay. Do I follow Jeffrey Bezos, by the way? I don't know if I do. I don't. I should put him in here. I'll put him on this list. You know, the stuff recommended on TikTok in America is vast. That's what I'm told, but like the thing is that the YouTube algorithm has actually been changing, and it's actually a lot less likely to show you thirst traps the last like 2 months. So I think that some of the changes that they had in China, they're starting to make to the ones in America. And I think part of it was these news stories that were going about in conservative outlets that, you know, they were pushing like harmful trends to kids and things like that. It seems like that they have actually kind of changed what gets pushed. Oh man, if I had gone short at 2.894, I would have gotten it. Maybe I should have gone for it. Anyways, it is I don't know. Well, I yes, I do know. I tell you what, we are in infancy of the machine learning revolution. Right. There was the agricultural revolution, there was the industrial revolution, there was the information revolution. The next revolution is going to be the automation revolution, right? And it will be driven primarily by the increases in efficiency created by machine learning. I think that machine learning is really the next frontier of opening up our economy. These machine learning algorithms, once we get, this is why, like the Internet of Things, okay, like the whole 5G things, okay, I really don't think that I need a processor and a cell phone receptor in every freaking device, okay, but the larger strategy here is correct. You need to get everything that you can to the point where that data is informed, where you can start doing the quantitative analysis on it. Essentially, that's really what it comes down to. Is you need to be collecting the data, and you got to get it into a form where you can run. Because the most of the work in doing machine learning is massaging the data into the form that you can put it into the model. Okay, so as more and more industries get to this point, it's going to drive some crazy efficiencies. It's going to drive some crazy efficiencies, and it's going to change the world. And yeah, we're going to get things to where things are going to be a lot cheaper, right? The other thing that I think is so funny is they're going to be like, well, there's not going to be any work. And the reality is, I think in the future is that you're not going to have to do the work. It's like if you can get a house printed for, $10,000. I mean, building a house is so expensive relative to what it could be if it was like automated, right? So you're not going to have to make as much money because you're not going to have that expense. What if housing went from something that you bought a mortgage to something that you just saved up for a few years and you bought with cash? Unless you wanted like a real house, right? Automation is a massive mean. Remote controlled Boston Dynamics robo dogs with miniguns are the future. Well, I don't think that automation ends up being quite what people think. You think it's intentional? Maybe. We can't prove that. I mean, that's a conspiracy theory, really. Because here's the thing. Do you watch TikTok in China? Do you really know what they get pushed there or don't? And like I said, like the algorithm changes all the time. So that's one of the really frustrating things of being a creator on TikTok, I must say, is that the algorithm changes all the time. So it seems like you're doing okay. And then the algorithm changes, and then all of a sudden you're not getting any traffic. It's like you went from getting a couple thousand views every time, and now all of a sudden you're only getting 100 again. And you're like, what the heck? What did I do wrong? Yeah, that's right. So it's the same with YouTube. It's like the best I can do is just make good content, right? And I try and put the content that I know is going to be the most useful and is unique content that nobody else is sharing. But this doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the most engaging or is going to catch the algorithm the best. But if you base all your content on the algorithm, you're just always going to be chasing. You can't win that game because they keep changing it. So let's see. We can't really say for sure what the deal is there. Can't wait until they teach every elementary child about it. So you know what I think is funny about OnlyFans? Like to be frank here. So I'm seeing this thing where these girls will open up an OnlyFans and then they don't become millionaires and they're like, wait, what? I thought it was easy. No. like the thing is that first of all, it's a competitive space, man. I gotta tell you. Like if I was a hot chick, I tell you, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like I don't think I understand people or my people's skills are good enough to capture people's attention consistently over and over again. It is a lot of work that goes into it. I don't think that people realize. Like it's hard. There's only the top like 0.5% of the people. Like I think the statistic I read was that only the top 0.5% of girls on OnlyFans actually make enough to live on. It's just this small, teeny tiny group at the very top that are like making millions of dollars off of it. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. And there's it's like that on a lot of things, actually. A lot of things in social media. So now all of these girls are kind of starting to realize that, and they're going through the same sort of I don't know, what would we put it, cycle that I think most day traders go through, right? Because the way that most day traders start, this wasn't it for me because I had worked at a bank and I knew what I was getting into, but I think that the way that it goes for most day traders is, okay, I'm going to become a day trader and then I'm going to become a millionaire from it. And then once you start doing it and you're not having any success, and then you start to learn that, oh, actually 95% of traders lose money, and it's only like this top 1 to maybe 0.5% of day traders that actually like really become successful and become millionaires off of it. And the number that are you're seeing are becoming less and less because of the robots. Hey, if it was like, I mean, I'm kind of morally opposed to dressing immodestly and acting lasciviously in public. Okay, I'm morally opposed to that. But if it was like, hey, you post fit pictures and people pay for that, and my wife had a particularly good looking foot or something, I would be all in, man. I got the skills. I got a nice camera. I've spent some amount of my life, learning to take good pictures and to make good content. And if there was a person if my wife had the thing, listen, if my wife ever comes in and develops the interest that is like it make her popular on social media, I'm all in. I'm just going to help her. She's going to become like a sewing, or I don't know what it would be. What is she doing right now? Oh, she's doing vinyl cutting. Okay, so if she becomes a large influencer in vinyl cutting, I may have to quit this channel just to help her do that. That's I'd be all in. Because from my perspective, I just think about, man, if I just had one person, like if my wife cared about finance and would write articles and help me write articles, that would be great. Or if my wife helped me edit videos, or just take the videos, or just record them. Like, to me, like I just know how much of a help that would be to me. And so I know if I can turn around and I can do that for other people. Totally into it. But I'm morally opposed to public displays of lasciviousness. But let me tell you something. I think part of the economy in the future is marketing is a big part of the future, because I think what you're going to start to see, I know it this sounds crazy, because corporations have such an iron grip on the economy right now, right? But what you're going to start to see is small businesses start to take over, because what's happening is the barriers to entry for so many different things are coming down, right? Especially like if it's something made out of plastic, like we have these printers now can print plastic. That's a big change. It's a big change, and we haven't seen the full effect of that. And the regulations are not set up right now. Like right now, if you want to create a crowdsourcing website where instead of buying the product like you do on Kickstarter, you bought equity, you cannot do it with the way that you can't do it properly, at least without some changes to the laws. But I think eventually they will change laws. I mean, there'll still be like lots of disclosures involved in doing it, but I think that they'll be able to make a platform that does this eventually, right? So there's going to be all of these small businesses selling small things. And how are they going to sell those things? I'll tell you how. They're going to get on TikTok and they're going to go live and they're going to sell it on live. And they're either going to be selling it themselves or they're going to be paying influencers to do it. And a lot of people will be making their money on marketing. So you take all of this money that's in marketing today, that was marketing on television, and you split it out to all these individual people. Like, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And this is probably where things will go if there really is like a situation where a very, very large swath of the jobs in the United States are automated and thus eliminated, right? So they'll just do small business things, and you won't even be like, you have to be massively successful with it, which will be cool, because it'll be like everybody will be doing their own tiny little thing, and they're all doing something that kind of has a chance of blowing up. But even if it doesn't blow up, that it could be enough for you to live off of. I don't know. Maybe this is just my fever dream, because I kind of like making content, and I wish that it was enough that I could just live off of. But you know what? If expenses were a lot less, then, if their house was not so expensive, then probably could do that, Jack Hopkins, Putin is dying ever so slowly, but certainly surely. I managed an oncology floor for a year. I've seen this look hundreds of times. It does look to me like he is going. Financial Times, what is behind the turmoil we've been seeing in cryptocurrency markets lately? So can I change the subject a little bit and end on Bitcoin? Here again, explain this to me. Okay, the mark. Okay, a typical drawdown in Bitcoin is like 80 to 90%. Okay, they're down 50%, basically down to levels that they were at last year, frankly, and only retracing back to, it's still not to the previous run, so we're not to like pre-pandemic levels right yet. We're not back down in the tens, right? And everybody's acting like it's the crypto apocalypse. Like, I'm kind of sitting here a little disappointed, because I'm kind of tired of the fraud that's coming out of cryptocurrencies and the whole tether thing. I'm tired of that, and I want to see it unravel. And it's not actually unraveling. This isn't that bad. Everybody's acting like it's bad, but it's not that bad. I hope that means that there's more to come, but I can't predict what cryptocurrency is going to do anymore. I feel. Mm-hmm. I don't get it. Is it just because too many little people lost money? I don't know. The treasuries are still kind of giving me this hint that they might move higher, but I'm having a really hard time sorting out if they actually will here at this point or not. It kind of looks like they could, though. Ever heard the thing going around the CIA started the Bitcoin? I've heard that, but listen, D. There's around any issue, the things will start on the internet. You can almost guess what they're going to be, because it's really just like somebody will say it, some commenter will say it, and it's just a theory, and they all and everybody takes it seriously. There's like conspiracy theories where like somebody says, I think this happens, and I went tonight. I made this big long thing, and I think there's a conspiracy going on here, right? But then there's just like rumors of conspiracy, right? Which is really how things start out on the internet, and that's one of them, man. We don't have any evidence to suggest that the CIA started Bitcoin. Really, nothing has ever happened to make us think that. I've really heard more compelling arguments that like Russia started cryptocurrencies, like. It's just silly. My nose itches like really crazy. I need to take my allergy medication. Hmm. Oh wait, what happened here? Oh. There was some. Oh, we might. By the way, I should note that we may get the abortion ruling today. An immigration case, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that federal courts do not have jurisdiction to review certain executive branch factual findings that determine whether non-citizens are available for adjustment of status. Those findings can dictate whether a person is deported. There you go. That is okay. That kind of ends the amnesty for everybody sort of thing that Democrats are trying to do. It means that who is the president determines that stuff and not the courts, basically. Nah. Also, another thing is that if it was all there to catch big criminals, they would be doing a better job at catching big criminals. But what I see right now is that they just let them run amok. It's really frustrating to me that basically every cycle. Okay, so like this time it was with real estate. Okay, so like we created a big real estate bubble. Like not only did we create a big real estate bubble in 2020, but like real estate was kind of crazy before that too. So what happened was all of the people that were hustling the most in the real estate world became rich off of it, and then they turned around and they became stock experts, right? Like multiple people did that too. Like Meet Kevin was probably the most prominent one, right? But there's a ton of these guys that they made all their money from real estate, and then we expect them to take their expertise on stocks. And these guys tend to lose hard when the bubble pops, right? And you see that in Bitcoin, like Yeah, there's all these people that are considered experts because they were in Bitcoin, but did they actually outperform the market or have any kind of like expertise? It shows no, they made money and that gives them all the clout on social media, right? And then what happens? The bubble pops and they lose the most because there was never actually any edge to what they were doing. And in cryptocurrencies in particular, the people that are making the most are the people that are basically scamming everybody. So you've just got like a widespread financial fraud going on in the cryptocurrency space, and I feel like the government is like 12 steps behind. They're talking about on this Supreme Court decision that Gorsuch dissented. I don't think this is a clear cut case because I don't think that it should be changing based on executive orders, right? Seems like we get into these areas where like the legislature can't do anything, so they try and make the other parts of the government do them, but that was never intended that would be how it works. Cheney slams GOP leadership for enabling white nationalism following. How did GOP leadership enable white? This is just so silly. Bank of England's Ramsden. We are all focused on anchoring inflation expectations. Okay, well, let's come back. We got about 15 minutes. Kind of see if there's anything we missed. Rabobank says there are whispers of a shift to physical commodities being used as trade settlement instead of treasuries. Okay, we'll read that later. S&P trades at quote unquote capitulation risk level. So that's probably what we want to read for the I'm betting that's going to be the story where they cover what Nomura is saying this morning. Wow, Luna sold 80,000 Bitcoin amid the UST crash. Jeez. That actually speaks really well of how much demand, how well the larger Bitcoin ecosystem is actually holding up. And they're still only down to 30K, in my opinion. But at the same time, I'm also like, surely there must be more to come out. Trump says there's no way Musk will buy Twitter owing to large number of bots or spam accounts. Fake anyone, by the time you get rid of them, if that can even be done, what do you have? Not much. I don't know if I agree with that, but the Treasury is going to take off here. The S&P 500 is turning down again. We'll see. They could. The timing right now seems a little off. 4:52. We are about 45 minutes later. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe we're going to have another large meta order long here. It does seem like it's correlated with the S&P 500 selling. I don't see it correlated with anything else, though. Gold is moving higher today largely. The 6J is still kind of flat. The 5-year did break a new high. Actually, that looks like all of them did. Looks like all of them broke a new high there. There's kind of like there's the break, and then there's kind of like the break that like continues. We're still kind of like that just broke, and they may come back still. Let's see how they attack this 25 if they roll through it. It's kind of interesting to me. I remember back when we were at like 2.75. It's kind of starting to feel like we might go back there. Future slide after China's huge data miss sparks broad-based recession talk. I bet. I really am wondering, like, okay, if China wasn't locked down, how far down would we be without China locked down? You're waiting until 20K and buying as much as you can below that? I don't know. I used to be of, okay, if my indicator tells me to buy, then I'm gonna buy, and it's never really happened. But I'm kind of starting to get to, okay, well, now if it does buy it, I don't know if I really actually want to do it, just because I just don't even want to be involved in it anymore. But I don't know. It kind of depends on how it goes, because I really think there's a real risk that regulation coming in is really going to harm the Bitcoin ecosystem more. Like, the reality here is that the advantage of Bitcoin is that it's not regulated. And if it's not regulated, will you really see that much money going into it? I'm not sure that you will. I'm not so sure that you actually will. And like, there's just a lot of problems with the technology and stuff. So I'm still concerned about a situation where we get a peak and it never gets that high again. I think that eventually it happens. Maybe it gets replaced by a different cryptocurrency, but I do think that at some point there will be a peak in Bitcoin and it trails off. Although that peak might maybe come much closer to when they mine out, right? I think that would be closer to when they completely mine Bitcoin out. But I don't know. I'm just gonna have to play it by ear and see what they're doing. We haven't really seen what they roll out, right? And we haven't seen Bitcoin react to it. Large lot trader said what's obvious is obviously wrong. Well, listen, just whenever you see resistance, support and resistance, like, you can make note of it. I mean, and it's not necessarily bad to, like, put it to make a trade based off of that. I'd be really careful, because when there's a price level that really seems significant and is widely followed, it tends to just create noise around that price level. But here in the Treasury, you'll see pretty regularly that they'll trade a little bit of a range, and then they'll move out, and then they'll push. It's like, I mean, you saw it here today, right? I'd have to zoom, like, way down here, right? There was a move up. There was a move up, and they ranged, and then there was a move up, and they ranged, and now they did another move up, and they're ranging. That's the way that the Treasury tends to go. So if you see that support down there, yeah, you can totally buy it there. But here's the thing. You got to know what's going to happen, because it can just as easily go range up to here and then all the way back down. It does that all the time. And yeah, you'd be on the wrong side of that. It can be ugly. It looks like they're going to continue through this time. I don't think that I would have sat through that range for it to go higher, so I wasn't really that confident on seeing it go higher, but it's going. I think that there might have been, so 884, 74, that could have been like another $20 for me. So the reason I'm pointing that out is that it seems that Treasury volatility is still exceptionally high. Well, let's come back to a volume profile and kind of look at this. Where does this put us? Okay, well, it's still not erasing the downside action that we saw before the weekend. So 120.00 half would be a more interesting price. And then above that, then you got like 120, 20, 16.5. Okay. 120 and 16.5 would be like the next step above that. Kind of, so it's kind of following the levels that you'd think based off of options. I don't know if I'm not trying to say, hey, ride this because that's how far it could go today, but I'm starting to wonder for the rest of the week if this week is starting out bearish, right? That they might make a push for 3,400. So we should be on the lookout for that. Mm-hmm. Ooh, the air conditioning turned on. Well, the look on this creep up is a little bit different from the other ones, isn't it? Is it because it just already went really far? This kind of looks more like consistent pressure and just kind of like a slow and consistent creep up, though. It's kind of what I'm seeing there. It did start when we started seeing the S&P 500 move down, but it seems like it's more an isolated move. So I'm starting to come around to the idea that the more isolated the moves in the treasuries tend to be, the more likely they are to continue. I could be dead wrong about that, though. It's a theory that I think we need to investigate. I'm trying to think about now, how can I test that? Verizon planning the first price hike in 2 years following the same move by AT&T. Is that going to be good for Berkshire Hathaway and the other AT&T holders? I wonder. I don't know. Well, guys, it was an okay day. Okay, look, they're already coming back there, huh? Something I really don't like here with the volatility that we're seeing in the treasuries is that those ranges are like way bigger than I'm comfortable with often. You know, it's like 15 ticks up, 10 ticks back. Something like that. Okay. Oh, the S&P 500 is falling out there, guys. I don't know. So we say treasuries a rally. I don't know. It's not entirely, I feel that it's not entirely clear what the markets are going to do from here, but it also feels like that whatever they end up doing today could end up being like really big for like the narrative. So I want to have like a good title in here and I just don't know what to put. Multileg Treasury rally. Good. That's a good trade. If you're trading this in the 10-year, you're making money, right? Another full. Okay, guys. I will see you tomorrow. Retail sales. That number could make or break this market. I must, I feel like every time I hype up a number, it ends up not being as big of a, but I don't know. This is a number that could really like make or break that's going to be, if the retail sales are bad, that's going to be the number that makes people go, okay, yeah, we really are going to go into recession. Or if it's good, that's the number that goes, okay, yeah, actually the chance of recession really is quite low. Yeah, but I don't know, that New York manufacturing data kind of suggests that it's not going to be very good, is it? So I'll see you then tomorrow. Stay profitable, friends, or at least don't lose it all.